we need to lift each other up and hold each other accountable. So many times, there are women standing in the gap and supporting us and loving on us, but we need Black men to love on each other, right? And be able to encourage each other, because there's still like a certain way that men respond to other men. And like I said, like whether it's, and when I talk about holding accountable, I'm not just talking about holding you accountable because I see you doing something wrong. But again, it can be holding you accountable for taking care of your health, your mental health, your physical health. It could be holding you accountable or challenging you. Men are competitive by nature. Yes. It could be, challenging you because, again, when we're running at top performance mentally, then we can run top performance in our business.
You're listening to the Black to Business Podcast, an educational podcast providing Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses. We chat with vetted Black entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and business owners as they provide tips and resources to help take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Ronnie T. Marshall. Welcome back. So as you know, we're celebrating Black men leading in business and their communities for the whole month of June. And we've been doing this since 2017, and it really started as an idea where we were initially celebrating Black women for Women's History Month, and we wanted to do the same thing for Black men, so we thought June would be the perfect month. Plus, it's the same month as Father's Day and Juneteenth. What other time than now? So in 2017, we partnered with Verizon Wireless to host our very first Black Men Who Lead panel, and it was such a great success that we thought we must keep doing this. And one of the things we wanted to do for the podcast is share stories of successful men in business, but also have those on the show who can provide guidance and solutions to some of the adversities and challenges that Black men specifically are facing. So as mental health challenges continue to rise, some Black people are still not receiving the mental health care and treatment that they need. And this is especially true for Black men who are not only affected by the general barriers to medical treatment, but also have internalized certain behaviors that fit within the social construct of Black masculinity. This idea that they have to man up and internalize a lot of the things they're experiencing impacts their health-seeking behaviors. Well, that's the old way of thinking, and the new way of thinking is manning up is managing your mental health. So I'm so excited to have this conversation with today's guest, Lamar Tyler, who's one of today's modern leaders in Black business and entrepreneurship. And the thing I love about Lamar's journey is that he and his wife, Ronnie, are doing business together. They founded the Tyler New Media, one of the fastest growing private companies in America, recognized by Inc. magazine on its annual Inc. 5000 list in 2021. And this is also the parent company of celebrated digital brands like Traffic Sales and Profit, which is America's premier learning community for purpose-driven African American businesses and entrepreneurs, and blackandmarriedwithkids.com, which is the largest independent African American marriage and parenting site on the web. Lamar has had such great success, and he attributes prioritizing his mental health and self-care to his ability to successfully manage multiple businesses, provide mentorship to over 38,000 people, show up for a family of 6, and push through societal pressures. During our conversation, we're diving deep into what Black masculinity means and how social expectations are affecting Black men's mental health. And we're also talking about the power of brotherhood and community for Black men, and why self-care isn't just for women, and what it will look like for men, and so much more. So let's dive in. Lamar, welcome to the Black to Business podcast. So excited to have you here. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Monique. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. So I like to start off with, I'm excited, first of all, about today's conversation because this is Men Who Lead Month. We're recognizing Black men in business. And I'm so excited that today we're going to be talking about mental health and managing mental health as a man. But before we get into that, if you could just share with my listeners a little bit about, I know we're going to dive into it further throughout the conversation, a little bit about who you are, what is it that you do in your business, and how did you get where you are today?
Sure. My name is Lamar Tyler. I am the creator and founder of a community of entrepreneurs called Traffic Sales and Profit. And my wife, Ronnie, and I are in business together. We started a separate site, a blog actually, back in December 2007. We grew that into the largest African-American marriage and parenting site on the web called blackandmarriedwithkids.com. We created 7 full-length documentary films, ebooks, audiobooks, online courses. And then people said, teach us how to do what you did. Teach us how to grow a business with employees and staff. So we created Traffic, Sales, and Profit, which is where we focus the majority of our time now, teaching entrepreneurs how to drive more traffic, convert more sales, and grow more profit in their businesses.
I love that. And when I was doing my research on your story, one of the things I noticed about your journey, as well as doing business with your wife, is that you both have built these brands and businesses to really positively change the state and then the perception of how Black people are perceived, as well as the way we do business. So I want to kind of dive into, why is this important to you?
You know, it's important to me because we think, and we totally believe, that if we can empower families, and we did originally through marriage and relationships, we do it now through economics, but if we can empower families, we can improve the stability of our own communities. And if we have, better communities, we have a better country as a whole. But, that's what we've been focusing on for the last, roughly 15 years through different brands. And now, even though we do it through entrepreneurship, we say if we can change the economic impact of individuals, and not only supports their families, but the people around them. We have entrepreneurs, and now that they launch a business, they create a business, but then what do? They go create jobs. And oftentimes when it's people from those communities, like they literally came up in those communities to create jobs, they treat the employees better too. And they pay them a living wage, right? They have better benefits because they really care about the people more so than some gigantic company would, where everything is just all about profit and the bottom line. So we just really want to empower people.
Love that. And you kind of mentioned also this destination that you and your wife created about marriage and kids, yes. Black marriage and kids. Let's talk about the beginning stages of that and really your purpose and inspiration behind that business and what you kind of mentioned what you all were able to do, but just the purpose behind the business.
Sure. Well, that site was called blackandmarriedwithkids.com. Like I said, we launched in December 2007 to promote positive images of marriage and parenting in the Black community. And, at the time, we'd only been married like a few years, maybe like 2 or 3 years. But we said, hey, there have to be other couples out here that love each other like we do. I knew that there were Black men, right? We're talking about Black men. Yeah. I knew there were Black men, Monique, that were not only taking care of their kids, but taking care of other people's kids, right, oftentimes as well. But we never hear that side of it. So when we looked, we said, hey, let's promote a positive look at what marriage really is, what it looks like inside of our community, what it looks like for those that are outside looking in. And when we did, we immediately, it kind of blew up overnight because we had couples that said, I've been married 20, 30 years. So I know this exists, but I never see it represented in the press, in the media, around other folks. And they had singles that came and said, hey, my parents are married 40, 50 years. Or they said, hey, I want a long lasting marriage. I want a relationship. I want a family. So I know it exists, but again, I don't see it represented. So sometimes, we talk about business. We have to step into a void where we say, hey, there's a gap right here. I know there are people that need this specific product or service, and we have to be the ones to deliver it for them.
Yes, certainly. And what was your experience like owning a business, like doing business with your wife?
Oh, that was very interesting, to say the least, if I can say that. We had to really learn to leverage each other's strengths and weaknesses. Now, the thing is, like me and my wife's name is Ronnie. We're total opposites. So I'm a risk taker. She's very conservative. Right. I'm a visionary. She's more of like the planner and the implementer. So it really took some time of learning what are things I'm strong at, right? And I need to kind of, make sure I take over those responsibilities in the business, and her saying what are things she's strong at, and she's handling those things. It took us trusting each other and saying that, hey, even though we have two totally different ways of getting things done, we trust and believe that in the end, hey, even though Ronnie's going to do it, I don't want to look at it when she do it because it's going to bother me, but it's going to get done. And she'll say, hey, you know what? She hates the way I actually do things. But at the end of the day, she know that, hey, at the end of the day, she knows she can depend on me that my thing is going to be done. So having that level of trust, having a respect amongst each other, and really being able to leverage our strengths and weaknesses together so that we cover each other and cover the business has been something really exponentially grew the business for us.
I love that. Love it. Love it. And love that you all can be honest with one another. I love seeing that. And so, Lamar, what inspired you to get into entrepreneurship?
Well, for me, it was always the thing I wanted to be an entrepreneur. The problem was I didn't know how to be an entrepreneur. Always wanted to. I had the the want and the desire inside of me, but I didn't have entrepreneurs in my circle. I didn't grow up in a family of entrepreneurship. So I spent a lot of time trying to educate myself, self-educate myself, reading books, reading magazines like Black Enterprise. And a lot of these pieces gave me information, gave me nuggets, gave me inspiration. And over the years, I tried different businesses, right? Some did okay. Some didn't do good at all. Some did great. Some failed. But it really wasn't until I began to really dive into education. I'm talking about conferences. I'm talking about coaches, consultants. I'm talking about group memberships, masterminds. Then I began to see like, hey, there's a shortcut in business. And a shortcut in business I found was getting around people that already have the answer. I always say that even my wife and I, we first launched Black and Married with Kids. It took us 7 years to gross our first $1 million in business. Not even $1 million per year, just like from $0 getting up to $1 million in the business. It took 7 years. The first 4 years we totally wasted trying to figure out what to do. And you know, for all entrepreneurs listening, what I want to share is that no matter what you do, there's somebody out there that already knows how to do that thing. There's somebody out there that knows, you know, how to recruit talent, how to hire people, how to create systems in your business, how to automate things, how to send emails, how to build websites. Like no matter what it is that you're doing in those pieces, there are people that already have that information. And if you're trying to teach yourself every single thing, you are wasting time.
Agreed. I love that. And then, so I asked that because today's conversation is about manning up and mental health and the emphasis on man because it is Black Men Who Lead Month. So let's talk about the old way versus the new way. The old way was, now when I say the old way, I'm talking about the literal discussion of what manning up means, specifically this traditional masculinity. So how do you feel the impact on Black men of social expectations and this traditional masculinity has affected their ability to be vulnerable and share their emotions?
Well, I think it's exactly, you know, what you just said, right? Manning up. And if you ask, you know, I'm in my mid 40s. So if you ask me my age and older, manning up means being tough. It means you taking on a responsibility, you shouldering whatever happens or comes, not just your way, but the way of your family as well. Right. And you standing in the gap and saying, hey, you know what? I'm gonna make sure that I'm the protector and I'm a provider. And when we think about provider, traditionally, a lot of times, you know, we focused on men providing in a fashion of financial. Like they want to be, you know, they need to be a financial provider. They need to bring home the money. They need to bring home the bacon. They need to do these things. But also we begin to see over the years that shift from not just being a financial provider, but an emotional provider, a spiritual provider. And over the years, like those some things in the past that, you know, as men, a lot of times we lacked in our relationships with our families, as husbands, as fathers. But we begin to see a shift over the years with that as well. So I think a lot of that of what we saw, back to your question, really was around the impression that never let them see you sweat, never let them see you hurt, never let them see you cry, you know, and there was a level of toughness that we expected out of the men in our lives.
Yeah, certainly. And speaking of like the old way, we're still talking about the old way. How do you feel like this affected people's or men's ability to do, how it affected their work, their business? Like, how do you feel that mindset affected that?
Well, I think it definitely affected it in a few different ways. Like you talked about, it could, you know, we can see the external manifestation of that through stress, through high blood, you know, like through stress, through anxiety, through anger, through, you know, all keeping all these things bottled up and not being able to express it, not being able to talk to anybody about it, not being able to actually share your weaknesses. And I'm not talking about just sharing it with the other fellas, which would definitely be a no-no. I'm talking about sometimes even sharing it with those closest to you, your wife, your partner, your children, you know, your parents, and having to kind of shoulder burden, if I could say that, of, hey, like I have to make this thing look a certain way. And no matter, even if I'm going through hell, I'm going through the toughest of times, I have to act as if I'm not. And I have to at all times be the one that can handle everything, oftentimes without leaning on other people in the process.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the old way, we got to talk about the new way. So one of the things you say is that now is the ultimate way for Black men to man up and to manage your mental health. Let's talk about what that means now, the new way.
You know, I think what the new way means is being able to for one, take the pressure off yourself and knowing, hey, I can't be everything to everyone, right? And in knowing that, hey, I have to find an outlet. When I'm talking about an outlet to the men that are listening, right, and the women that love them, I'm talking about that outlet being having someone to talk to, having someone you can express these things with. Because I'm going to tell you honestly, like a lot of men have said, well, Lamar, I don't feel comfortable that, even sometimes I can even express what's going on with me to the person I love, right? Maybe, maybe I'm married, maybe I'm dating, whatever. But in my relationship, because in the past, I've shared that, moment of what I may consider weakness with someone else and they use it against me. But, as we talk about what this new man can and should look like, we're talking about being able to find people that you can trust, that honor your conversations, right? To keep them private for you, but you can let those things out. You can share them with different people, because oftentimes what happens when we keep everything bottled up, it's not just emotional, it's also physical. Like I mentioned before, right? We can have panic attacks. We can have high blood pressure, which a lot of times in our community, we're already prone to high blood pressure anyway. Yeah. It literally can take a toll on your physical body as well as your emotional well-being. And I want to, Monique, if I could, I want to share.
Yes.
The some of the things about the old school fellas was good. I don't want to just throw the old school men under a bus. And it's some stuff that new school men, could improve on a little bit. So I always like to say that, I feel like the perfect mix of man is a combination of both. Because if we, Monique, let me know if I'm lying when I go, right? Let's start talking.
You're not lying. You're not. I always say, even because I'm from the South, but I live in New York, I'm traditional, but I take some things work now. But there are some new ways I agree with, but there's still some old things that work. And
that's what I look at. A lot of times I will ask, individuals with older dads or dads that have passed on now, how did you know your dad loved you? And to think about it, right? It was so different back then, because they would say, well, because he worked every day. And back then, that's how a lot of men equated and showed their love. I love you because I provide for you. I put a roof over your head, right? And those old school men would catch a train and go from the Mississippi Delta, leave their family behind, go to the cities of New York City and Chicago in order to just work and provide to send money back home to the South. Yep. Now, like I said, they ain't show a whole lot of love, right? You try to hug one of them old school men, you might get punched in the mouth, especially if you his son. Especially he might allow that from his daughter. If you his son, man, you might catch a 2-piece in the chest real quick. But that brother would put down and do what it takes in order for his family to survive. Now, a lot of times, right? The newer fellas, the way they transition is amazing, because you can see what you may think is the most thugged out dude in the world, but he'll be in the park with his little boy or his little girl, pushing him in the swing, hugging on him, kissing on him, holding hands, the things that the old school dad would never do. But there's a whole lot of dudes. It ain't gonna go from Mississippi to Tennessee, better yet, Mississippi to New York or Chicago to provide to put it down. But like I said, so I don't want to throw either one directly under the bus. But I say what we can do is look at the best of both worlds, and how can we have men that are willing to do whatever it takes to protect, to honor, to provide for their families, at the same time as showing love, of nurturing those relationships, and taking care of themselves and their mental health in the process.
Yes. And Lamar, one of the things you spoke about is, being around those types of people that you can, be vulnerable with, so that men can be vulnerable with. How do you, for someone who's listening, how do they maybe know that it's a safe space, but then also deciphering, okay, this might not be the best situation for me. How do I get out of this situation so that I can man up and manage my mental health?
Well, I think that's a great question, Monique. I think all of us, we need to get around people that support us, that encourage us, that elevate us to the next level, or make us want to elevate to the next level ourselves. And oftentimes, many of us, we may not be in the right circles. And as entrepreneurs, same thing as entrepreneurs are personal. As an entrepreneur, if you're not in the right circle, you or your business won't grow as far or as fast as it should. The same thing you personally, if you're not in the right circle of people, you may not grow as far or as fast as you should as it comes to your personal development. I think a lot of times the difference is, in the business, we'll say, hey, you know what? There's nobody around me to serve me in this area. I'm going to go find some people, right? I'm going to find a tribe, a community, a group, a meetup, something like that. In our personal lives, we just figured that, hey, like it just is what it is. Like if my family doesn't push me to be greater, to be better, if I can't confide in them, we're just my family. There's nothing I can do about it. Well, these just the people I went to school with, or people I went to college with, or my fraternity brothers, my sorority sisters. But you can choose what positions to put yourself in and what people to put yourself around. And that's what I want to encourage everyone here. Again, if you're not surrounded by the right people, go find them. And at the same time, if you have a friend, right? Because you're like, okay, how do you know who you can talk to and how you can talk to them? For the people in our lives we care about, we should be prompting them to let them know that this is a safe space. Because it's hard for people to try to sometimes, figure out, okay, who is somebody that's going to honor this conversation? Who is somebody that's not going to go run and tell my business? So, like we should be able to let people know that, hey, I noticed something is different about you. I noticed something is off. Hey, has everything been cool in your relationship? Everything cool with the business? Everything cool on the job lately? And begin having some conversations outside of just the surface level, being able to dig deeper with people and also sharing what's going on with us. Because what I found oftentimes, whether it's personal and business, if I lead a conversation with sharing what's going on with me, that makes the other person realize that, hey, you know what? This is somebody I can have this level of conversation with.
Yeah, certainly. Like when people ask you, how are you doing? And maybe you might say, oh, I'm doing fine. But then you say, oh, responding like, how are you doing? And that person really tells you how they're doing. That does open up the conversation and say, okay, we can have an authentic conversation and I can be vulnerable in this moment because they open it up like that.
Exactly. Didn't it make you want to go back and be like, wow, me too, actually,
I've had that happen, actually.
I forgot to tell you, I actually do have this other thing.
Yes. I love that. And so one of the things you also touched on is the community aspect of it. I want to dive deeper into one of the reasons we created this space for Black men who lead. Of course, I'm not a man, but I understand the needs of creating a space for men. I am a daughter. I'm a friend. I am a sister. And I understand that it's important for there to be brotherhood and a community for Black men when it comes to mental health. Like, if you can dive into deeper why this is so important, even from a Black man's perspective.
Well, I think it's definitely important, Monique, as you hit on, because I think, we need to lift each other up and hold each other accountable. So many times, there are women standing in the gap and supporting us and loving on us, but we need Black men to love on each other, right? And be able to encourage each other, because there's still like a certain way that men respond to other men. And like I said, like whether it's, and when I talk about holding accountable, I'm not just talking about holding you accountable because I see you doing something wrong. But again, it can be holding you accountable for taking care of your health, your mental health, your physical health. It could be holding you accountable or challenging you. Men are competitive by nature. Yeah. It could be, challenging you because, again, when we're running at top performance mentally, then we can run top performance in our business. In so many things as an entrepreneur, as you talk about Black business, as an entrepreneur, there's so many different things weighing on us. And once we get done with, running that job, which is not a 9-to-5 oftentimes, because you're an entrepreneur, a lot of entrepreneurs are working way more than 9-to-5. You still are going home and interacting as a boyfriend, as a husband, as a father, as a son, as an uncle, nephew, all these different things and different roles that you may have, right? Your civic organizations you're a part of, maybe your faith-based organizations you're a part of, but all these different things. So you need a community of like-minded men that are going to hold each other accountable, that are going to support each other, that's going to pull on each other, that's going to encourage each other, and then challenge each other in the end, and are challenging each other around the right activities.
And Lamar, I definitely want to ask, what do you think, in your opinion, there is in terms of access to resources when it comes to business entrepreneurship for Black men, or even just, we'll start there with business entrepreneurship tips for Black men, or just these resources? Because I do, as a woman, I see that a Black woman, there are a lot of resources out there for us. And I just want to know, like, what are your thoughts on the state of that for Black men, and where do you see that headed?
Oh, that's a great question, because this is a very interesting time. Like right now, Black women are opening up more businesses than anyone else. So Black women are really like dominating entrepreneurship. So, it was one time I went to a conference. I was speaking at a conference, and most conferences I speak at are literally like all Black women. It's like me, maybe another speaker, and it might be like two dudes in the audience. And one of the black men in the audience ran up to me and was like, "Another brother." And he was just he was just so excited. He was like, "Where you come from, bro? Where you live at? Like, what's your backstory? What's your business?" He was just like hungry and starving to connect with another guy. Because, like I said, like it's no fault of women. Women are out here killing it. But like we have to have a space where men can come and be a part of too. I mean, that's something like literally strategically with our brand Traffic Sales and Profit in our company. We had to literally be intentional about making sure, okay, we have a space for both men and women. Yeah. And like we reflect both men and women because we think it's important to have everybody in that conversation. And so many times it's easy for a group of men to get together and have like a one-sided thought process and conversation. It's easy for a giant group of women to get together and do the same thing. But my wife, Ronnie, and I, like, we've been intentional on saying, hey, in order for our community to get to where our community needs to go, it's going to take all of us. So we need all of us in the room learning the same things and growing at the same pace and rate.
Yes, I love that. And speaking of course, there's this conversation of, we talked about the old way of doing things and the new way of doing things. And this conversation about just that Black women are more so in a position to where they're advancing faster than Black men. What are your thoughts on that type of conversation and saying that, okay, Black men understand that this is what's happening and they're there to support Black women?
Yeah, I don't think so. So for one, I want to reframe everybody's list. I want to reframe your thinking around this. Right now, Black women are outperforming everyone in a lot of different areas. And that's something that in the mainstream doesn't talk about a lot because they're not the kind of story the mainstream runs, right? Right. But if we look, like, I remember, like, we did a web series a few years back, and as we were doing it based on demographic data and studies, like real research. And at the time, there were more Black women enrolling in college than any other group. That was more than white women, white males, Asian women, Asian males. Like Black women are literally dominating in a lot of different areas. But in the general mainstream conversation, that's not going to be the conversation. It's just going to be like, okay, how are they stacking up against Black men? So that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is that any man that is really about his business, really about growth, really about, doing more, having more, being more, leaving a legacy, is going to invite a woman that's doing amazing, that's doing above and beyond. Like, one of the things that excited me the most about my wife, Ronnie, when I met her was how much she had going on, was how much she had in her own life done individually. Because I said, hey, I know I make things happen already. If I can get with somebody else that makes things happen and we can make things happen together, like, I didn't know what would happen. I didn't know that we would launch, the world's largest African-American marriage and parenting site. I didn't launch, I didn't know we at one point had a community of over 40,000 Black entrepreneurs. But what I did know 16 years ago was that this is going to be special. Like, you cannot put two excellent people together and have mediocre be the outcome. So literally with me, right? Like I said, like as I talk to men that, and this is like, like brothers that are serious about wanting to do something with themselves, with their lives, with their careers, with their business, whatever it could be. They're not intimidated by that because they realize that if you put two powerful people together, the outcome could be historic.
Yep. I fully agree with your message. And I wanted to make sure I get your perspective again, because I'm not a man, but I know that these are the types of conversations that are being had. Furthermore, I want to talk about Black men just getting together and creating these spaces for one another. What are some ways that people can look to create these communities so Black men can look to find communities? Maybe they're in these rural areas where they feel like, okay, I don't see any men that are like me. How do I find this type of brotherhood or community that I'm looking for? What advice would you have for them?
That is a great conversation to have, because the benefit of the internet technology and what today's man has is they can reach out and touch people that are not, within just their same zip code. And oftentimes, like, before, we were so shackled and tied to who was immediately around us. And the only way we could get around different thought processes and a different level of person was to physically get up and move from where we were. But now there are all types of great groups and communities. I have a good friend, Matt Presbury. He runs a group on Facebook called the Black Fathers Group, where it's literally like thousands of Black men sharing stories and being open, honest, and transparent around fatherhood.
Oh, I love that.
To be in the group and see, black men, it's like exactly what we're talking about, right? Being able to express and share that, hey, I'm proud because my son and my daughter graduated from high school today. Hey, I'm out doing driving lessons with my kid. Hey, my 2-year-old just learned how to do this thing, and to see hundreds of other black men celebrating those dudes in the comments is phenomenal. And then, like, another example, I got a good friend, Donald Morton. He has a community called Reman, right, where he says he want to help black men break the vicious cycle of missed potential. So literally, right, like between Donald Morton, between Matt Pressberry, between I got another guy here, Ken Braswell, Fathers Incorporated. There are men out here doing the work of building these communities. So if, a man is listening or a woman is listening and wants to direct the men in her life to resources, the beautiful thing is they're out here now. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. And in a lot of these communities I'm talking about, like Ken with Fathers Incorporated, the beautiful part of it is, like, even though he's online, he's doing offline events all the time. Different things in the community where, like, hey, you know what? For Fathers Incorporated, you may find them online in the digital space, but you can go out and literally, see the work they're doing in communities. And I think that's, an underlying theme along a lot of these communities I'm seeing popping up directly geared towards black men. I mean, we just need to shine more of a light on the work that they're actually doing.
I totally agree. And I love that, what this sums up in the message is that, there are these resources out there, and sometimes it's going to take that effort in terms of, like, if you're not in these areas, like you said, the effort of, like, okay, it's online, but making that effort to say, okay, if they're having an in-person event, I'm willing to travel to here to be a part of, like, the in-person event. So I love that.
I think that part is important. Like, sometimes, again, we got to get out of our own comfort levels. It's surround ourselves with different levels of people. And sometimes that will take you leaving your city, your town, your state to get around other people that's on a different level of some other stuff.
Lamar, what was that? Was there ever a moment for you where you felt like I have to push myself? Like, what was that moment for you where you felt like, okay, I need to be around this type of person or these types of people in order to get to the goals where I need to be?
That's interesting. I'm not sure. In my life where I was like, hey, I need to separate, because I've just been a person like focused on my goals, right? But I see it around me a lot. But I'll tell you, like, one of the times I'm glad I did. I actually had a high school friend that passed, so we were at the funeral, and we saw a lot of other high school friends, and it was a group of guys together afterwards. We said how good it was to kind of see each other and be together. And one of the guys said, well, look at all of us. Whoever thought that we'd be good fathers one day? And I was thinking in my head, me, Monique, like, I thought I was going to be a good father.
Right.
I was like, this is not a surprise to me. This is like literally what my intention was. Right. But I think, again, it goes to show you a lot of times our expectations for our lives may be different than the person right next to us that grew up in the exact same situation. So we have to, again, like I said, like if you feel like you're held down, strapped down, remove yourself. Like I said, the beauty of technology is you can remove yourself right there with the phone that's in your hand, right there with the computer that's on your lap, and get connected with other folks.
Removing yourself. That sounds like I'm putting me first, self-care, which is I want to transition into next. Self-care mattering for Black men. So I want to talk about why self-care isn't just for women and why it's important for Black men to establish this peace in their lives. Let's talk about that. Like, why is that so important?
Yeah, I think the self-care is vital. And I think the thing is, like, most time we hear self-care is women talking about it. So naturally, when we think about self-care, we think about things, a lot of things that, like, you know, that the sisters say that a lot of men wouldn't necessarily attribute to themselves. Right. You know, because they say, like, hey, you know what, like, I don't, that's not really what I do. But self-care for you could look like hanging out with the fellas instead of working extra. Self-care for you could look like, you know, getting around the neighborhood and shooting hoops, or going out and playing golf, or, you know, having, you know, taking time to read that good book that you want to read. But literally, it's figuring out for you in your life, what is it that gives you peace, that gives you joy, that allows you to take a break. And especially as entrepreneurs, because as entrepreneurs, there are always going to be demands. One thing I tell my wife all the time, I say, hey, guess what? If you don't do the work tonight, you'll have, you know, some other stuff in the business to do tomorrow. If you do the work tonight, you still gonna have some other stuff to do in the business tomorrow.
Exactly.
So it literally does not matter, right? Now, sometimes we got to get stuff done, but like no matter what, as a business owner, there's always going to be something else that's there waiting. So it's about kind of, carving out for you what you need in order to recharge. And a lot of times what you need may look like something totally different than what everybody else does. So, part of it is figuring that out. And it was a few years back, I had a friend that was a therapist, do some surveys and research on our team and on us and different, around personality types and different things that we did. And as he did like this assessment, one of the things he came back with is he said, hey, Lamar, he tells about the employees, about ourselves, all the stuff. He said, Lamar, one of the things that, I noticed I went through this, he said, you need an outlet. And he said, you kind of, you take on the burden of the employees, take on the burden of your kids, take on the burden of your wife, but you don't have anybody you share this with. You don't have anything that you do other than work and take care of everybody else. So it literally caused me having a conversation with him for him to say, hey, you know what? You need a hobby. You need like, because I think even as men and as entrepreneurs, we get busier, the hobbies we had begin to slip away. Or the people that we do these things with, right? Like they get busy because now they got kids, now they got activities, now they got things that they're doing. So I literally had to find some things that I could do outside of working, outside of the office, that would take me away, allow me to just be active and be, away from doing just the day-to-day nonstop work. Or, on the other end, like just doing work or taking care of the family, doing work, taking care of the family. It had to be something else.
Yeah. And how did establishing boundaries and what role did boundaries play into this, or just for those men who are listening, who are having the trouble with establishing boundaries, like how did it play a role into your life in getting to where you needed to be, but then also some ways that they can start to establish these boundaries so that they can have this peace in their lives?
That's good. And as you were saying that, what I'm thinking about is boundaries with care, right? Because I think anything needs to be done with care. So yes, you need to take time for you and know where your points are. Where literally it's just some points where I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm no longer going to be any good for whatever this thing is I'm working on, whatever this project is. So I need to take a break and get away from it so I can come back to it. Or I might say, hey, you know what? Like I literally can feel the stress on my body. Like my shoulders tighten up, like my body get tighter. So I might say, hey, you know what? Like I got to get away from this. I need to get a massage. I'm going to call up one of the boys, see if we can play golf. I might see if I can do something to literally just snap it and change the mode. And like, I need to make that happen. Like if I don't make that happen, I'm not going to be able to show up for myself, for my business, my employees, my family in the same way. But also I just want to add that with care part, because at the same time, what I'm not going to do is do it on a weekend where, my family come to town, my wife's family come to town. We got, 20 people going to be in the house, but I'm like, look, self-care time. I got to make it happen. And I'm going to just, disappear. And I wouldn't expect her to do the same to me either, right? Because we work as a team. But literally having those times and those moments where you need to get yourself together and get yourself right so you can do things you need to do.
Yeah. And that makes me think about, making sure that it's more often so that it's not like a one-time thing. That's or good. It just all hits you at once. So it's like, okay, prioritizing that this needs to happen often.
That's good, because if you do it more often, then because sometimes life happens. That's one thing I want to be real about.
Yeah.
Like life does happen. So we would like to put everything in a perfect box with perfect timing, but sometimes could be the day you want to do self-care, but guess what? You got to get this thing done in the business or else you can't meet payroll. But again, like you said, Monique, if you're doing these things on a more consistent basis, like everything's not coming down and flooding on you at one time. And if one time you can't do the things you need to do, it probably doesn't have the same toll that it would take if it's one time and you haven't done it for a quarter or 6 months leading up to it.
Speaking of, everything happens when it's supposed to happen, and that I think it comes up of having this healthy balance. So for you, how do you find time to do it all? So managing multiple business, providing that mentorship, like you said, to over 40,000 people, but also showing up for a family of 6 while pushing through these societal pressures. So how do you balance it all?
Yeah, for me, and this is an interesting perspective I have. I'm not sure if there is a such thing as balance. I'm not sure. And I think we're always searching for it, but I'm not sure if it's ever going to be a time where I get the same exact amount of attention to my business, same amount to my kids, same amount to my wife, same amount to my self-care. And more times what I'm realizing, there are ebbs and flows. There are times when I need to lean into my wife more. There are times I need to lean into the business more. It's time I need to lean into the kids more. And being able to really just try to discern when those moments are, about kind of what needs to happen at that moment across each one of those different things. And then knowing at the same time that I can't be at all places at all times and make all things happen for all people. And I think once I kind of came to that realization, it helps me begin to move in and out of those lanes more effectively, and knowing that, hey, you know what? I can't do everything my kids need me to do this week and do all the work I need to do in the business.
Yeah.
You know, it might be some things in the business just don't get done, or they may not get completed. And guess what? Like, that's okay. I need to get the main things done, but other things may not get completed. Or, you know, realistically, right, we got over 20 something people depending on us to make this payroll every 2 weeks. So it may be something I need to do in the business, and I just may need to come home late that night. But, you know, and that's the important, like being able to ebb and flow through those different parts and realize that there may not be a point where you get the same exact amount of attention to every single thing. And guess what? That's okay.
I love that you said it's not, you don't think it's like a perfect balance, but I think like that healthy balance, or as healthy as possible. But there are just some, like you said, some days it's just going to be push through. And yeah. So Lamar, for you, what are some of the things that you're seeing in your spaces, maybe, or have seen for men who are struggling to balance, and how, well, one, what are some of the common things that you see? And then we'll talk about like some of the solutions, because someone who's listening may be going through the same thing. So it's whether they have this all work and no play mentality, or they're putting their mental health to the back burner.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I think if you were like me and don't have an outlet, right, you feel like you have to be responsible for everything, and you're taking on everything. If you like feel yourself getting angrier quicker, like your fuse is a lot shorter than it normally is, and you can't really feel like you're more aggressive, and not just aggressive with outside people, sometimes aggressive with the people that are closest to you as well. And even I think a lot of times with men, and something that men, even more than women, may be more prone to, a lot of times when we feel these different feelings, we turn to different substances to self-medicate, right? Whether it could be a drug, whether it could be alcohol, different things like that. So we really have to monitor ourselves and make sure we check in with ourselves. And then like on the other end of it, as you mentioned, about what happens, how do we stay away from that? We need to begin having conversations saying, okay, you know what? It's okay to have therapy. It's okay to talk to professionals. It's okay to talk to therapists. Like I said, that moment I shared with you was a very important moment for me to begin a different way of life, but it wouldn't have happened if I wasn't speaking to a therapist at the time that could pinpoint that out and then talk about it.
Yes. And how does this help you show up as the best leader, like prioritizing your self-care, prioritizing your mental health? Like, how does this help you show up as a great leader?
Well, you know, it's just like the airplane analogy, right? You know, if the plane's going down, they tell you what, like, put your mask on first. And, you know, it's and the reason they tell you that every time before you fly is counterintuitive. That you would think, hey, like I'm, you know, I got to grab that mask and put it on all the people around me first. But you have to take care of yourself so that you can take care of other people. So for the men listening to say, hey, you know what? Again, I want to be a provider. I want to be the backbone. If you're the backbone, you have to stay healthy and strong, or else everything else can fall down around you. So that's what I encourage the men listening today to do.
Love it. Lamar, this has been great. I want to know what is up next for you. What are some of the things that you're currently working on, and what can people do to support you?
Sure. They can find me everywhere at Lamar Tyler on Facebook, on Instagram, just LamarTyler. On TikTok, I'm out messing around on these TikTok streets too. On TikTok, mainly on Instagram and Facebook. And then also we have a conference for Black entrepreneurs, women and men. If you're trying to grow to the next 6, 7, or 8 figures in business, you can go to TSP, like Traffic Sales and Profit, TSPLiveTickets.com to get more information on our event, June 23rd through the 25th in Atlanta. We also have virtual live stream tickets as well to see me, a host of speakers, and Magic Johnson is coming in as our keynote as well.
Oh, I love that. Love it. Love it. And I want to end it off by talking about some of the problems that you're solving at Traffic Sales and Profit. Just talk about some of the things that you offer and some of the solutions, and talk about your process with your business.
Right. So at Traffic Sales and Profit, like I said, we help people in 1 of 3 buckets. Bucket number 1, they got a great product or service, but they just don't have enough people to sell it to. Those people with a traffic issue. Bucket number 2, they got communities, right? They're online influencer. They got a meetup of people locally, but they just can't get them to buy what they have. That's a conversion problem, or that's a sales problem. And then bucket number 3, people that have money coming in but need to make more money or need to increase the profit on the actual sales they have. So we help entrepreneurs through coaching programs, through events, through online workshops and challenges we do in a free Facebook group called Traffic Sales and Profit to get to where you need to get to the next level.
I love that. And Lamar, can you think of some of the, or one of the most transformative stories that you've had with working with these business owners and entrepreneurs through your business?
Sure. I'll tell you, like over the last year, we were one of the Inc. 5000. It's Inc.'s magazine listed of 5,000 fastest growing companies. Thank you very much. But the part I'm most proud about is we had 5 of our clients, right? They were either members of our program or alumnus of our program that were on that list as well, right? Black businesses that have grown to multiple millions of dollars, that are employing other people in our communities, and that are making it happen for themselves and their families.
That is so amazing. I love that. Love that. And getting people results and pushing our communities forward. I love it. And Lamar, finally, what does it mean to you to be a Black man in business?
Great question. Me, to be a Black man in business means that I'm following a legacy, because there have been many great Black entrepreneurs before me, but I also need to leave a legacy behind me. And, I want that to be a legacy of ownership. I want that to be a legacy of someone who didn't just make money, but poured money back into our communities and provided opportunities for our communities. And then also a legacy of love between my wife and I, that we can show that, hey, you can have a Black couple that has a successful marriage relationship and they can build a successful business together.
So beautiful. I love it. I love it. This has been so amazing. And I know even as a woman, I gained so much from this conversation. So I know the men who are listening are going to gain so much more. Thank you so much for just pouring into our audience today and just doing the work that you're doing for our communities, for your business. And we just appreciate you for being on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Another great conversation. So many gems dropped, and I love that Lamar said that in order for us as a Black community to get where we need to be, it's going to take all of us. And I know this message and conversation is going to be so valuable for our audience of Black men. As Lamar said, brotherhood and community is so important, and manning up means managing your mental health, not ignoring the signs, seeking help. And as he mentioned, if you're in a space where you know you need to find like-minded individuals, seek online communities or join these communities and maybe travel to where you need to get to in order to get around those like-minded people. So much value there. He is a successful Black man doing business with his wife. I am so happy to see that, as well as providing value to so many people. Did you hear that? 38,000 people, and him attributing his success to managing his mental health. And as Lamar mentioned, he does have an upcoming conference coming up in Atlanta, so please check that out. You can find out more information about the conference at blacktobusiness.com/99, along with more information about Lamar and how you can connect with him. And if you are a Black man listening to this episode, please share it with another brother. We appreciate you for all that you are doing in our communities, and we see you. So chat with you next week, same time, same place.